Hello and welcome to another episode of Atomic Vinyl Reviews. And before I get into the video, which the topic of you should have, seen in the title, we're going to be talking about some little updates on me painting my bootleg, aka third-party King Ghidorah 1964 MonsterArts figure. So I have a lot of both important points for you guys if you're actually planning on doing this yourselves, and just a little brief update on how mine's coming along, the repainting of it. But yeah, before I get into that, I just want to say, I'm filming this video on my phone, and so I'm sorry about the quality. I don't know if the quality would be much of a lower quality than my normal content, because normally my content isn't of the highest quality. I'm a bit of a lo-fi YouTuber, but hopefully that'll all change, and I'll kind of explain that later on in the video. I'll have a little bit of a section at the end just talking about a channel update. But yeah, for the moment, I'm filming this on my phone because I have some issues with my current setup. So I hope everything is okay. I hope the audio's fine, the picture, all of that stuff. So don't worry, this isn't the style that my channel will stay in for the rest of the time or whatever. But yeah, let's just jump straight into it. So in front of me, I have my 1964 bootleg Legend Creation branded King Ghidorah in pieces, as you can see right here, and I've begun the process of painting him gold. Now, I actually have tried to film this video like at least 8 times now on my old setup, like I was just saying, and I've had so many issues with the frame rate, and just the videos were not watchable at all. That's why I've been postponing the release of this video, because I've actually been wanting to release this a lot earlier. But yeah, I've tried it numerous times, and then basically I've decided to make this video because I've seen people making a lot of, I'm gonna say, poor choices in painting their own King Ghidorahs, and I really wanted to make this video so you guys had a heads up about this, so you didn't fall into the same mistakes that a lot of other people have been doing. So let's roll back a little bit and talk about this figure. So this figure, for those of you who don't know, is, a bootleg figure. Nobody really knows where it came from, but it looks suspiciously exactly like some sort of unreleased MonsterArts figure that just happened to be released by a bootleg company. The sculpt is phenomenal. And the articulation is really good, actually, in this thing, especially if you take some time with a hairdryer just to loosen up the odd tight joint, but nothing's really falling off or anything like that compared to most other MonsterArts King Ghidorah figures. And yeah, the only real issue with this figure was the color, because they copied the color exactly from the, 2019 King Ghidorah figure. So I'll just grab this tail, because it's still unpainted, and I'll show you guys that King Ghidorah figure. So here he is, my one, in his beautiful little display. If you're familiar with my channel, you know that I have some tutorials on how to build all these little figure displays and these buildings and all this sort of stuff. So if you're interested in that, do check that out. But yeah, here's our big guy here. Really nice figure. But again, has a really bland sort of flat paint job, very similar to this bootleg 64 color-wise. And they tried to copy that pretty much identically on the 64. So going back to that one, that is not the color that this figure should be. Because this figure is so affordable, many people have been repainting theirs gold. So instead of waiting for MonsterArts to release one, which we don't even know if they will anytime soon, or if it's actually from them. So God knows where it's really from, but yeah, I think it is an unreleased MonsterArts, just personally. But yeah, instead of waiting God knows how many years until that happens, many people have taken it upon themselves to repaint this beautiful sculpt in the appropriate colors. And since I run a little page on Facebook called the, I really should remember this stuff before doing these videos, because I never remember the name of all these pages I run, groups I run on Facebook. But this one's called something like the Bootleg, Godzilla Figures and Kits Bootleg something counterfeits or bootleg group. I'll have it in the video description again. Sorry for never remembering that stuff, but because I run that page and I follow a lot of the posts that people have been putting on that page, at the moment it's almost exclusively just people posting about this figure, because it's in the whole bootleg Godzilla figure community. It happens to be probably the most prominent figure on the market at the moment. There's been a lot of activity about it, and there's been a lot of people doing repaints, showing off their repaints, and I've run into a lot of things that they've been doing. Well, when I say a lot of, I mean just one key issue that people have been doing very wrong. Now, they have gotten pretty alright results. The figure itself looks marvelous once it is painted gold, and their ones have looked beautiful. But the main issue that I've seen them run into is they have been using the wrong kind of paint. Shown here is the paint that I'm using, in particular this Tamiya gold leaf color. Now, what this paint is it is a model paint that you'd use to paint actual sort of plastic model kits, that sort of type of thing, model ships, cars, boats, planes, all that sort of typical stuff. And this is an acrylic paint, but this is acrylic paint that's alcohol-based, and it is designed specifically for painting on plastic. It's a very good brand paint. There are also a number of other brands that I would have suggested using or I would have used, but Tamiya just is the brand. They're a Japanese brand that happens to be the most common here in Brisbane, Australia, where I live, in amongst the hobby shops and stuff like that. But, there are other brands like Citadel, Vallejo, and you can get Humbrol paints, but they mainly use... I'm not sure if they have acrylic paints, but they use enamel paints, and they also work on plastics, but you run into a few more issues using those, so I just recommend alcohol-based acrylics. But the main issue I've seen other people run into when trying to do these repaints is, instead of going for an actual alcohol-based acrylic or some sort of paint that's designed to be used on plastic, they just use water-based acrylics. Now, hold on a second, I'll bring in some water-based acrylics that I have lying around just to kind of show you the difference and give you some idea of what they are. These are water-based acrylics, at least the ones that I use. This happens to be Montmartre brand, it's white, Chinese white. And these paints, the main difference between these sort of paints and where you would most commonly sort of know them for is sort of, typical craft paints is kind of what you'd associate this sort of paint with. It's what people use to paint on canvases. It's a much thicker paint, and it is water soluble, so you wash it off with water. And you might be asking, so what about this paint specifically makes it less suitable for painting plastic than these types of paints? I mean, paint is paint, right? Well, you can get these to work, and in the past, I have used these on various sort of plastic kits, in particular some of the vinyl kits that I've made in the past of a couple of kaiju and stuff like that. But the main reason these, even though if you really try, you can kind of get these to stick on and look alright, and like I said, people have made these look nice in the ones that they've been making. The main reason that you don't want these sort of ones is this paint is thicker. So these little paints here, the paint is generally very runny, but it's got a very nice opaque finish, except for this one, which is a transparent yellow, but that's a whole other thing. At the moment, I'm just kind of talking about these sort of paints. So these are very runny. You can see there, it just kind of, it's very, very watery. It's about the consistency maybe of milk, maybe even less so. Putting the wrong lid over it there. And you can instantly sort of, it has a very, sort of a stronger smell to it. You can instantly sort of tell. Whereas this stuff here is a lot more mild, very sort of tame paint. But if you see this sort of typical acrylic here, it is not runny at all. It comes out like this, and you can generally tell which type of paint it is. I mean, it's about the same consistency as oil paint, which is a whole other thing. Don't use oil paint for this. Oil paint takes, it's again a thicker paint designed for canvases, and it takes forever to dry. So there are a lot of different kinds of paint, but you can see this kind of paint, it's designed for paper and for canvases and stuff like that, and it's a lot thicker. Whereas this sort of stuff here is what you should be after. So because this stuff is thicker, it leaves less detail when you paint it. So if I were to have painted this in the actual acrylic water-based craft paint instead of the proper Tamiya alcohol-based acrylics, you would have seen sort of the coating of that paint would have shown through less of these details. It would have the coat would also have not stuck to this as well. These sort of paints are notorious for peeling off of plastic surfaces. They need something a little bit more porous to stick to. Also, the fact that these paints are water-based mean that these sort of plastic non-porous surfaces would make them run a little bit more instead of, sitting flat and drying well, especially if you're trying to thin them with water to make the coating less thick. So, they're just generally not designed for it, and you're not going to get the best results. They're likely to rub off really easily and all that sort of stuff. Even if you put a lot of like a clear sealant over the top, you'd still just, you can make it work, but, you're doing yourself a disservice if you can just go straight to a paint like this. Now, a lot of people might be worried about these sort of paints because, you oftentimes, if you're thinking about, paints that work on plastic, a lot of people think you might need something like turpentine and stuff like that to thin it out, or special products like thinners and different things to clean your brushes and stuff like that. But that's predominantly with those Humbrol paints that I was talking about, the, what are they called? Enamel paints. So here we've got a little tin of Humbrol paint. This is, a nice green. I used it to paint some little World War II bomber planes many, many years ago. So we have got a couple of these Humbrol paints. And these types of paints are enamel paints. So these are the ones that you need turpentine and, those more harsh solvents to actually work and thin the paints and to clean your brushes with. Like I said, these ones, water. So water, as long as this paint is still wet, will clean your brushes, no problem, clean any surfaces. They're really easy to get stuff, to clean. It's another reason they're not the best for plastic, because they are a lot easier to sort of wipe off of things. But this stuff, like I said, it's alcohol-based, so you can buy special thinners to mix this paint. Like Tamiya has their own brand of it, like a special little pot that's, this same size, and it costs the same amount, which is, I think this pot cost me like $4 Australian. It is one of the smaller ones. These are some of the older ones that somebody gave me once, so I don't know if they still make them in this size. They probably do, but this is the ones that I've been finding a lot more available, and they do cost quite a bit for a little amount like this, but this should be plenty to paint just one of these Ghidorahs here. And what I have been thinning it with, and what I recommend you guys use, is this. So this bizarre blue liquid here that I've used to thin this paint and to work it and to clean my brushes with is none other than Windex. Yay! So this very common, very cheap window cleaner is also alcohol-based, and it is really good at working with this paint. Even the blue tint to it doesn't affect the results at all. If you're not painting something blue, don't worry about that. It does come in a clear variant if you're paranoid about that. I just recommend any kind. Blue is fine. So that is what I've been using to paint this guy here, and I recommend you guys do something similar. Just do a bit of research about paint to, paint model kits, for example, or customize figures, that sort of stuff. Just do a little bit of research first. So as you can see, I am taking mine apart here. And now you can kind of just paint it without taking it apart. Like I've done that with this leg, just as an example for you guys. And I haven't done any shading or any washes to this thing. And it does look really nice and still works really well. So for any of you guys wanting to do it really simply, you can just do that. And you can see I've already got some gold on my finger here from touching that paint pot. No big deal. Again, this will wash off pretty easily with some of that Windex there. The thing about painting with gold is you don't actually typically need to do too much to it in terms of shading and washes or anything like that to make it look really nice. We've seen our special color version bootleg, which is right over here. He is painted pretty much solid gold apart from detailing on his face, and he looks magnificent there. The reason for this is gold itself. It bounces the light off contours and shapes and angles of the sculpt really dynamically, and sort of almost does all the contouring, I mean, and the shading that you want to paint onto a figure naturally itself. It accentuates the highlights, makes them brighter, and makes the shadows darker. And that's what, metallic paints do naturally. So you don't have to do too much to it. Now, with mine, I am going for the best sort of most professional paint job that I can kind of physically do. So I'm trying to do, experimenting with different washes and stuff like that to make it look really nice and all that sort of stuff. I do wish I had an airbrush to actually do some nice shading on it in different parts, because I would really like to replicate something like this airbrushing shadows that they did on this wings on this figure initially. However, I don't have an airbrush, so I may just paint it solid gold and may just do a little bit of some brown detailing here and there to it and stuff like that, just to make it look a little bit more organic. But, it is what it is, and I'm just letting you know this because gold is actually really easy to work with if you're able to get a nice flat opaque layer, which again, these types of paints are designed with a lot more pigment per milliliter than some of this sort of paint, where you actually need to build up a thicker layer. So just another reason why I would avoid acrylic water-based paints. I think a brand that I've seen a lot of people in the US use is called Apple Barrel. I don't know if we have that here in Australia, but that is a really common one that I've seen people using, because I think it's just like a really common one that you guys may have there. And yeah, I'd avoid that one like the plague if you were trying to do a repaint like this. But yeah, getting into what else you want to consider if you are doing a repaint on your own. If you are going to be, trying to do it as best as you can, I do recommend taking the figure apart. And if you do that, try to manage your pieces so that you don't lose, the positioning of them when you're putting them back together. The reason you'd want to take it apart in the first place is to get in all the color under all those little hard-to-reach places where it articulates and is hidden depending on which movement. And you also want to make sure that those places, are painted really thoroughly, so no matter how much you move the figure, it doesn't break apart the different paintwork that you've done, and also to, not get too much paint rub or anything like that. Once you, finish painting your pieces and they're all still apart, what I recommend doing is you get something like this. This is a clear, a matte clear coat spray. And again, this is just a Tamiya one because it's what I had available, and I recommend you go over it with something like this. This is basically just a clear layer of a type of lacquer or something that protects your paint and means that it's not going to rub off. This is really important on articulated figures. Normally, if you're starting from scratch on a project like this, or, customizing a figure, I would recommend you prime it with something, which means just putting down a flat coat of paint before you put your actual proper colored coat, just to kind of prepare the surface so the paint goes on as smoothly and as professionally as possible. However, this figure here actually was already primed, essentially, so I just went over the existing paintwork, which you can see is this really flat beige-brown color in these sort of joint cavities here. You can see that's still the raw unpainted part that I painted over the rest of this thing with gold. These chunks in particular actually went over them quite heavily for brown wash, which is just a really diluted brown, which I used this brown here, and I diluted it with Windex quite heavily and just basically allowed the paint to flow in between all these scales and then dry and then repeat. And I'm going to dry brush this again with that gold again, and maybe if I want to brighten it up, because this Tamiya gold leaf is actually really accurate to the color he was in the film, because the 64 Ghidorah was nowhere near as like super bright gold as like that one there. He was actually a far more matted, sort of very flatter type of gold, sort of, something very simple. So this paintwork actually works really nice in creating a much more natural looking gold. But I still want him to, pop on the shelf a little bit. So if I need some extra color, I might try and do a little bit of a wash with this clear yellow, which will add a little bit of color to this. But whether or not it needs it, I'm not sure yet. So that'll all, I'll figure that out with time. But just kind of showing you guys how he goes together and what he'd look like painted like this. So I'm just kind of taking this slow and giving you guys a little update on that, and I'll give you guys another update as this guy gets closer to completion. It's going to be a lot of work to get these all these joints here done. So if you are going to do this project, be ready for that, because all these little joints here, if you're taking them apart, trying to do it as properly as possible, it's a bit of a pain. As for the faces, the mouth is actually done fairly well on these figures, so I may keep most of that how it is. Or the eyes on him, I may just use them as a template, but he should have brown eyes instead of those yellow eyes, and I don't know how I feel about that black outline around his eyes, or how dark they made the holes in his nose. And also the dry brushing they did on his little horns here is awful, so I may try and actually vary up the colors a little bit, brighten up the gold of something. Who knows, but I'll still mess around with that, but I'll update you guys on how that goes later on. And obviously you want to brown up his manes a little bit. Nothing too dark or anything, but just a little variance from the rest of the color that we've got on him. So, that kind of covers some of the tips that, I wanted to give you guys about pursuing a project like this, and just really don't fall into the same mistake of using this paint. I've actually saved a couple of people that I've just talked in the comments of some videos on from using this stuff, and that's been good. Another little tip is, a lot of these figures, even though the articulation is really good, the wings do have some issues falling off. They are on these little pegs here, which articulate back and forth. Some of these can be stiff, so again, a little heat won't hurt to help with those. But one thing I recommend doing, just to make these hold on into the little sockets on the wings better, so I'll just show you guys those little sockets, just to make them hold better in here. A lot of people have suggested using some tape just around these little joints here. However, I don't like putting tape on my figures because it will leave a sticky residue on it, and it's kind of unprofessional looking. So a nice tip, and this is not just for these joints, it works really well on loose ball joints too, is use something like a clear nail polish. I don't even know if it has to be clear, to be honest, but that's what the when I heard the tip, they said clear, so I guess that's a safe bet. So this is actually just an Undercoat nail polish that I use. Just one of those unwanted ones that my girlfriend had lying around, so she gave me this. And I find it works wonders if you paint a ball joint or paint a little thing like this with it and let it dry properly really well, and then you stick the other joint on it. It will basically have make the ball joint or the socket peg a tiny bit thicker by like less than a millimeter, and generally that makes it squeeze in a little bit more. You can do as many layers as you like, and that'll help fix up that joint and any loose ball joints you have. And that's sort of the rule of thumb for loose ball joints, and for tight ball joints, again, just get a hairdryer, heat it up, and gently work it while it's warm, and that'll loosen up that joint, and you'll basically be able to fix any sort of ball joint issues you have on figures, short of something actually snapping with those two methods. So that's basically it for my update on my painting of this one, as well as my sort of advice for you guys doing this at home. Just wishing you the best of luck with that, and don't hesitate to ask me if you have any questions about this sort of stuff. I'll be more than happy to answer your questions as best as I can. Not that I know if I will necessarily be able to. I'm just kind of sort of a hobbyist at this stuff and did a little bit of research, but I'm pretty far from like an expert or whatnot. But, pretty simple task, if you're willing to put in the time and all that sort of stuff. But for the rest of this video, I have two more things I want to talk about. The first is concerning this figure over here, and the next thing will just be about the quality of my videos and some sort of bit of a channel update and that sort of stuff. But for you guys who don't know, this here is the boxed version of this 64 King Ghidorah here, in the bootleg legend creation version of box of the King Ghidorah 2019 figure box for some reason. And as you can see here, yeah, we've got the 64 figure in there. And if you don't know the story behind me having two of these, the reason is because I really wanted to review this figure as soon as possible, and when it first became available on AliExpress, I had no idea that it would be available on eBay and for cheaper later on. So after I ordered one for quite a bit more than the cheapest on eBay would later on be, in like a couple of days actually, I ordered this one here off of AliExpress. It cost me, like twice as much. And then then I tried to cancel this order when I found out that these ones on eBay existed, and that cancellation didn't go very well, and so I ended up buying two of these accidentally. So because of that, I have decided that what I'm going to do, since I am in the process of painting one of these guys here, is I'm going to paint both of these figures. I'm going to paint them nice and gold, basically try and make it as close as possible to what this figure would look like if it were an actual MonsterArts version of this figure. So, like I said, the figure is actually really well made, the sculpt is beautiful, the articulation is great. It's just the paintwork that's lacking, and I figure a lot of you guys may not want to have to go through the ordeal of doing all of this sort of stuff. However, if you people are a bit experienced with figure customization, this one shouldn't be too difficult. Again, the main issue is the tail and the necks if you're taking them apart or stuff like that. But if you don't really want to bother with stuff like this, you're not of the crafty kind, then I will have this one available for you guys once it's ready. I'm not exactly sure how much it's going to go for. I am going to try and at least break even for the amount that I initially paid for this guy. And, the shipping and stuff like that. So it's not going to be, crazily... I'm not going to charge super crazy amounts for the paintwork of it, even though it's going to be a lot of work. But just since, I'm hoping that one of you viewers is gonna be picking this one up, I'll try and do the best job I can and all of that sort of stuff. So just letting you guys know that this guy will be available. I'm gonna do future videos on that, and just keep an update on how this one comes along to get an idea of what this guy's gonna look like. So yeah, if you're interested in that, do let me know either through messaging my Facebook Atomic Vinyl Reviews page, or through the comments or whatnot, or however you see fit. And that's about it concerning King Ghidorah here for today. The last little thing that I wanted to talk about is kind of the reason why I'm filming this on my phone and what changes I'm going to be making to the channel in the near future. If you guys didn't know, most of my videos tend to be recorded on a little Logitech webcam, which I've been filming on with my laptop for a while, and the results used to be really good. Like, sometimes the lighting and the compositions of the shots was really bad, but just the video quality tended to be really nice. Audio quality was sort of meh, but I did invest in a little microphone recently, so I'll continue to use that one, a little Samsung Go mic, which is kind of like a webcam-sized microphone that's really nice, a little condenser microphone. And that setup would work really nice, except for my laptop actually has slowed down considerably. I don't really know why either, because I cleared out a lot of space, I cleared out a lot of garbage on there, went through all the sort of tutorials on how to speed up your laptop and all that sort of stuff, and I think something is just malfunctioning. I have no idea. If you guys have any tips on that, do let me know. But yeah, at the moment, like, it's a gaming laptop. It's an Asus ROG gaming laptop of some kind. It should work really well, but I can't even bloody well play Minecraft with it running more than like a frame a second, and like on the lowest settings even. So it's a bit bullshit at the moment. So I don't know what's up with that. And that's why I've tried to film this specific video, like I said, over the course of a couple of weeks now, numerous times, and every time I film it, I rewatch the footage, and the frame rate is so garbage that it's just not worth putting up on YouTube. I actually have a couple of other videos that I've really wanted to put up for you guys, but the frame rate has been awful, and that's why I've been a bit behind on some videos, and that's why I've been posting up some older videos which have much better frame rates for you guys, because I actually have a huge backlog of unreleased content which I kind of sprinkle into my current content every now and again when I can't be bothered filming something new for the week. So yeah, that's kind of how my channel works at the moment. So instead of doing the normal person thing and being like, well, I may as well invest in a nice, cheap, sort of proper camera instead of a webcam, what I've decided to do is I've decided to build a PC to run my normal webcam. So right here, you can see I have some of the components. It's, I'm gonna be putting it together when the rest of the parts arrive later in the week. But yeah, I'm hoping this is gonna fix the problem. I spent a crazy weekend, literally just from like Friday to Sunday, starting off at like just looking up laptops to try and buy a new laptop, and then I wasn't satisfied with specs on those for the price. So then I tried to look up which desktop PCs I should get, and that I wasn't satisfied with those either for the price, and then just like caved and was like, oh fuck it, I'm gonna build my own computer, because it turns out that you can actually get a much better, more powerful machine for a lot cheaper if you build your own. So basically, I spent that weekend learning how a computer works and how to build it and what the best parts are, and then, shopping around everywhere to try to find the best deals. I couldn't sleep for like days after this endeavor, because enduring it, because at night all I could think about while I was lying there so tired is how, well, I was just thinking about computer electronics, because I just tried to learn it so fast. It was not healthy. But I'm glad I got it over and done with, and I'm fairly confident I have parts that should work, and now it feels fairly simple. So hopefully this little beast here will be able to run that webcam, and then I will be able to have high quality content for you guys, and the fact that I'll have a much better PC will mean a lot better content just in terms of video editing, maybe. And maybe I can put out some other sort of content. Maybe I've been planning on starting a gaming branch of this channel for a while now, so maybe I'll finally be able to do that once this thing's put together. So, yeah, I'm trying to get you guys better content in the near future. And what else should I say? That might be the last piece of housekeeping, aside from anyone who's been waiting for my next episode of the novel, Godzilla King of the Monsters novelization audiobook that I've been doing. So if you guys aren't familiar, I have been recording an audiobook of Godzilla King of the Monsters. It's been really fun, really interesting read, because it does add quite a bit from the movie. It's also very close to the movie, but it just adds some extra stuff that you wouldn't know was there, some more depth to the characters, a lot of internal monologues, some extra kaiju, all that sort of cool stuff. It's been really entertaining and interesting, and it's had a fairly alright following. So I know a lot of people have been waiting for like I'm between chapter 7. I'm just after chapter 17 at the time of recording this video, actually. So I'm about to record chapter 18 soon. But yeah, I originally planned to have those episodes come out like a couple of weeks, but aside from just the craziness of trying to do this computer thing, as well as painting this and a whole other plethora of things, I've just been struggling with time, because I recently started a new job and a whole bunch of other stuff. So I haven't forgotten about that book. I am actually really eager to get more into it, but whenever I have time to record, it's like super late at night and I just pass out and stuff. So it's just been a bit tricky finding a good time for that. So just letting you guys know, I have not. I'm gonna keep going through that. It just might take a while, and I thank you guys for bearing with me on that and all that sort of stuff. And I think that's it. So, I hope you enjoyed this video and that it has been helpful to you guys. And if you are, again, interested in getting this figure here, but nice and gold, that will be available very, very soon, in a matter of weeks, hopefully, which isn't that soon, but in the Atomic Vinyl Reviews time scale, it is fairly soon, knowing how quickly I get this stuff. But yeah, do be sure to like and subscribble, or dislike and not subscribble if you're so inclined. Totally up to you guys, and just let me know what you think, and I wish you the best of luck with your custom paintwork of this guy. I actually highly recommend you guys do get this figure if you are, even if you're not planning on painting it. It's still just a great figure to have in your collection. But if you are going to attempt something like this, I think it's going to be a fun and rewarding project to you guys. And just remember to take these tips on board, and I'm always here if you've got more questions and any of that sort of stuff. And yeah, with that, may all your vinyl be irradiated vinyl. Over and out.